vessel 300 cubits long.
According to Tom Vosmer, an expert on ancient boats, not even 19th century engineers could have built an ark that big out of wood alone. Even 19th century boats had steel frames inside wooden frames.
The problem with a 450-foot boat made of wood is that the wood as a material cannot maintain the shape of the boat. And the boat would start to distort at sea, the seams would open up, and it would sink.
It's a safe bet that a wooden ark that size would have sprung hundreds of leaks along the length of its huge hull and sank like a stone.
One of the things that seems to bother people who are against a literal interpretation of Noah's Ark is the scale of the ark. One of the things that they say is you can't build a wooden ship that big. In the same breath, they would usually pick some ships from 100 years ago, maybe the 18th, 19th century sailing vessels, and say, well, they had trouble getting boats longer than 330 feet or so, so therefore it's impossible for ancient people to build Noah's Ark.
An ingenious construction method seen in ancient shipbuilding that used edge-jointed planking puts the BBC's faulty claims to rest.
In this exhibit of the Ark under construction, we're treating the planking as exactly the same way as the Greeks did the planks. When Greeks built their ships, the large ships, they used to use multiple layers of planking, and they had this special trick where they had joints in between each plank. And you can see the joint here, they're a tenon, and they fit into a mortise in the adjacent plank, and that locks the two planks together. There's no way they can move, there's no way that they can break a seal and let the water in. This is a very advanced technique. In fact, it wasn't even seen at all in any of the ships built in the last few centuries in Europe and America. We believe this method would allow the ship, the Noah's Ark, to be built without any problems at all with movement of the planks and leaking, which did plague some very large wooden ships. Interestingly, wooden nails, called tree nails or trunnels, are actually a very successful way to join planks to the frame. The reason these work so well is because, first of all, they're a nice big diameter, so it doesn't dig into the wood. But what happens is, when water hits the wood expands, seals off the hole, and makes it impossible to remove. Now that's a lot of work. It's too much work for the shipbuilders in 18th, 19th century. They weren't going to bother with that. And that's why their ships used to loosen up. In fact, they used to call the ship a tight ship, because when they first started it was nice and tight. All the joints were held together because they hammered the cotton and they hammered the caulking in between the planks, which made the ship tight. But after a while it became, well, a loose ship. The ancient Greeks, however, had much higher quality in the hull. They built the hull with planks that were mortise and tenon, throughout thousands of mortise and tenon joints. It doesn't take any high technology, it just takes more labour.
I'm sure many people have heard of the phrase, thinking outside the box. When we're used to seeing something and someone changes it, for many of us, we just don't like change. And some of us rebel against that. That's why when I've had people come into the Creation Museum and see the slightly different shape of Noah's Ark, it's almost like, this is terrible, this is awful, you can't change what Drs. Morris and Whitcomb did.
We're really just following in their footsteps, developing new ideas based on more information as we research Noah's Ark as a real vessel in real history.
Noah's Ark, real ship or child's plaything? The Bible clearly teaches that it was a real account. But are we correctly teaching this to our children?
One of my pet peeves is opening up children's books and seeing the account of Noah's Ark, Noah's flood, and looking at a picture of Noah's Ark looking like an overloaded bathtub with giraffes sticking out the chimney about to sink at any moment.
It makes sense in a children's room to paint Noah's Ark in a cartoon style. It's friendly and bright and exciting. But there's a dark side, and that is that these children grow up into adults, and on their way, all they can remember is this cartoon picture of the Ark.
what happens today is we have whole generations who are growing up in the church and they sort of look on what they're taught from the Bible as just a group of stories. Because when they go to public schools, the majority do go to public schools, even from the church, they're taught about dinosaurs and they're taught about fossils and they're taught about the Grand Canyon, and they sort of get the idea, oh, what you're taught at school, that's real. But at church, we learn about these Bible stories. And one of these Bible stories is about Noah's Ark. And it was a cute little ark and a cute little bathtub ark and so on. We need to teach children that Noah's Ark was a real boat, just as the Bible describes it.